Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this dialogue on the new Asian order, navigating India and China's relations in the changing world. As the regional power dynamics continue to evolve, analyzing how these two major powers and players balance competition and cooperation on the global stage has been more crucial than ever. Tonight, we'll unpack the geopolitical, economic, and strategic dimensions and consequences shaping Asia's emerging order and what it might mean for the rest of the world. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for joining us today for this very crucial dialogue. And I'll just jump right into the questions. So, my first question to you is that as 2025 draws to a close, how would you characterize India and China's relations within this year? Are we seeing a pattern of sustained cooperation, or are we seeing managed rivalry?
Thank you very much for inviting me to this dialogue. I'm very happy to be a part of it. To answer to your first question, I mean, it's known to all that China has been very consistent in maintaining to keep border issues aside while pushing forward or trying to push forward economic, trade, and cultural exchanges.
Yeah.
Indeed, it's also true that since 1980s until the Galwan standoff in 2020, uh, uh, the two countries successfully managed to compartmentalize contentious issues like the border dispute while promoting CBMs, that is confidence building measures, and agreements such as those in 1993, 1996, then 2005, and 2013. While promoting these CBMs and agreements, the first setback to this wonderful trouble-free, if I may say so, arrangement the two countries had from 1980s until the Galwan happened in 2020. Even the terms like Chindia, that is China plus India, or the Himalayan consensus, they were very much in use in the discourse in both the countries. So the border agreement announced by Prime Minister Modi and President Xi in Kazan, Russia, last October, is viewed by many as moving forward from Galwan. So as we draw closer to 2025, we also have witnessed Prime Minister Modi visiting China in August end and September beginning to be present at the SCO, where he also had an hour-long one-to-one meeting with President Xi Jinping.
Yeah.
So when we look at these developments, I think one can say, or it is safe to say, that these things can be cited as evidence that dragon-elephant tango, this is the expression Xi Jinping used at the SCO in Tianjin, that this dragon-elephant tango is possible even after Galwan.
So you just mentioned the Galvan clashes, and my second question touches upon that. So since the Galvan clashes, border issues, as you just mentioned, have been a persistent shadow in the relations shaping India and China. Do you think that these standoffs have permanently altered the military engagement on those sides as well as the trust on both sides?
Well, I mean, last year, if you look at the relationship, how it has been fluctuating, I mean, there have been lots of ups and downs and fluctuations in the relationship for a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
So one can say that it's a new normal in their bilateral relationship. And the uncertainty and unpredictability in the so-called new normal is also a kind of a normal. So when the relationship will turn bad, nobody can say. So this is also has become a permanent feature in their bilateral relationship. So I think it is very, very complex and relationship fraught with a lot of complexities and issues which nobody can say for sure
Hmm.
uh, whether these bad times or good times will last for how long, you know.
Hmm. So the next question is that despite the political and military frictions, as we may put it, China remains to be one of India's largest partner when it comes to imports and when it comes to supply chains. So, how does India manage this economic dependence on China despite the strategic mistrust of China? And do you think that decoupling could ever be an option for them for either of the two parties?
Well, I don't think, I mean, whatever be the negatives in the economic and trade equation between the two countries, I don't think decoupling or total decoupling is possible. Or both sides are not actually thinking of completely cutting off their ties.
Mm,
But definitely, when the political relationship is uh, at odds,
mm,
that definitely has its impact on the economic and trade and investments, etc. For example, last year, India's exports to China have fallen,
yeah.
whereas Chinese exports to India have risen.
Okay.
But ultimately, if you look at the trade deficit India has with China,
Mm,
that's going up and up consistently for last I think more than 2 decades or something.
mm,
And so, I mean, immediate impact is this, but also there is this issue. I think Chinese have indirectly or through their track two channels have very categorically conveyed to India that China is ready to expand Chinese investments and Chinese trade with India, but not directly with India. I mean, they want to do it through other forums, multilateral forums like
mm,
RCEP, etc. They very categorically conveyed that India should reconsider joining RCEP. That will help boost the trade not only with China but also with other member countries of RCEP, etc., etc. On the other hand, if you look at from India's side, even after Modi's visit
mm,
last month, India has not changed even a bit. The restrictions India imposed on Chinese apps and Chinese investments after Galwan.
mm,
So they stand intact. So there is no change in that. So I think this is a very good indicator that, I mean, although people have called this a reset of relationship, one of our former ambassadors and foreign secretary has just the other day called this new relationship developing between India and China as
mm.
economic competition and coexistence.
Yeah.
I think that is little bit far-fetched. I don't think that meets the reality.
The coexistence part or the competition part? What's far-fetched?
Well, I think if you, as I said, if you look at the trade figures or if you look at uh, the way Indian exports have declined to China, of course, Indian exports have been largely raw materials.
Mm,
And so there is definite reluctance or perhaps deep mistrust,
mm,
etc.,
mm.
on both sides. So
Yeah.
that is definitely playing its role in preventing the two countries to come forward in a more enthusiastic manner to expand their investments and mutual trade, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So that is one immediate casualty. But even if you look at in the long term, I think there are several issues which continue to remain under the surface, and perhaps both sides are still not ready to talk about them in a candid fashion.
Mm. So you just mentioned RCEP, and India is active in BRICS and SCO and Quad and other similar platforms. So how do you think like India's participation in these multilateral forums helps compete or complement its relationship with China in the emerging multipolar order?
Yeah, I mean this is a very interesting issue, and a lot has been written in both the countries. In fact, in China, I have been observing, I think for the last many years, many Chinese commentators and scholars, they have been actually, some even have gone to the extent of asking their government to somehow stop India from being a member of, in particular, the SCO, if not
Hmm.
BRICS plus.
Hmm.
So this is one aspect. And in India also, I mean, until Trump spoiled the US-India relationship, in India also a lot of opinion was there, which was not very happy with India continuing to be a member of SCO
Yeah.
in that sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, of course, these are forums where many countries are members of these two forums, but are they really multilateral forums in the strict sense of the term?
Yeah.
I think that's open to debate.
So you just mentioned India joining RCEP and then having deepening its trade relation with China. What benefits do you think it would reap for India if it does decide to join at the end of the day?
Well, India has had a very intense debate, especially political debate between the ruling party and the opposition parties, even before the current government of Prime Minister Modi came to power in 2014.
Yeah.
And the fact that India is not a member of any of the international trade forums.
Hmm.
So that itself speaks volumes about why India is reluctant. And I think one of the main reasons, if we talk about RCEP also,
Yeah.
it would have really, really given a setback to Indian farming and India's agriculture.
Hmm.
And if you look at Indian politics, I think the vote bank or the constituency of voters
Yeah.
largely comes from the rural
Rural side of
farming
India.
community.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and who ultimately determine the fate of the elections.
Hmm.
So no government wants to go against their interest. And I think that was the reason why at the last hour, India decided to not join RCEP. I remember even former Japanese Prime Minister Abe, who was very hopeful and very confident that Prime Minister Modi will join RCEP.
Hmm.
And when Prime Minister Modi, I think just at the last minute, decided India will not join,
Hmm.
Prime Minister Abe even said at that time that, okay, we will wait for India to reconsider its decision.
Hmm.
It can come and join after 1 year also, etc., etc.
So you just mentioned the Tianjin SEO summit that happened in Tianjin. So we saw Russia, China, India, and also North Korea kind of cozying up to each other. So with Russia drawing closer to China post after Ukraine war or amidst the Ukraine war, I would say, and well, India is already has historic ties with Russia and China also economic ties. How do you see this Beijing, Moscow, New Delhi triangle coming up together in the new Asian order?
I think it's again a very interesting, um it's a very interesting way to look at, as many experts and commentators have tried to phrase it like this, that India, China, and Russia, I mean, the order might change according to one's perspective
Yeah.
as a triangle. But, but actually, it does not have any ingredient which can actually bring them together as a triangle, in the sense that initially in the West, in America also, some scholars thought that this is a new front coming to resist the American uh, dominance or the
Yes, it's like an
American
anti-West bloc that's
anti-West,
emerging. Yeah.
anti-American order,
Yeah.
international order or global order. But I don't think, because if you look at India, China, and Russia, they all have their own specific issues and troubles with America. But
Hmm.
if you look at them separately also, it's only China which has been very firm and assertive in standing up to America.
Hmm.
And Chinese are always very suspicious of
Yeah.
how long Russia will continue to stand up against America. And if you look at some of the recent commentaries by some Chinese scholars, then it becomes very clear that they don't think or they have no confidence that India can sustain being against the US for long.
Yeah.
So I will say that, of course, China always tries to uh, bring together all those countries and forces which China thinks by bringing them together, it will help the Chinese national interest or the Chinese foreign policy objectives,
Yeah.
period. Beyond that, China does not expect either a stronger alliance or a triangular partnership, etc., etc. I don't think such kind of thinking prevails in Beijing.
But you just said that these three countries don't really have much of an ingredient that brings them together. Do you think economics does not play a part?
I don't think because there are very specific, well-defined needs, which, especially India, for example, the needs India has vis-a-vis Russia,
Hmm.
they're very specific and limited.
Hmm.
And likewise, at least for the last 2 decades, we've been seeing, and it's becoming more and more clear in the recent past, that China looks at India as a market,
Hmm.
as an export destination for its products. China is now not interested, especially after Galwan.
Yeah.
China is not interested in sharing technology with India,
Hmm.
and China is also not interested in bringing investment into India.
Hmm.
So as long as India offers China a good market, it's all fine. But that does not help India much, right?
Hmm.
So that is why I was saying that there is not really any solid grounds to look at the prospects in the future, in the short term or in the long term, where the economic interest can bring them together into some kind of a, tangible relationship, which can be called
Yeah, like an everlasting bond, homie. That
right,
that's
right,
there to
right.
stay. Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
so now I want to touch a little bit about the governance models. So India is obviously democratic and believes in development and stuff. Like a development-oriented leader in Global South and South Asia. China, on the other hand, is more state-owned, and they're very contrasting models. How do you think that these both players want to push their influence in Global South, and how do you think that this would then come out, and what does it mean for Global South as a whole?
I think Global South, in the recent past, especially in the last 2, 3 years, has been getting a lot of media and international policy, foreign policy attention.
Yeah,
But actually, if you look at the influence, especially comparing influence of either China or India among the Global South nations, I really don't see there is any comparison worth it, in the sense that China has now, especially during COVID period and after that, China has tried to project itself as representing the rights of developing countries to fight for their right to economic growth and industrial development,
yeah,
not just as continue to be a raw material supplier nation.
mm,
So in that sense, for example, BRI or Xi Jinping's another very, effective, popular of course, but also effective slogan or campaign of shared community of
yeah,
humankind.
yeah,
These have been very successful.
mm,
And if you compare these two with what India has been offering to the nations in the global south, there's really nothing much.
yeah. It cannot be
compared to,
compared
yeah,
because
I
what China
mean,
is doing is magnanimous.
yeah. So, I mean, the India is, of course, seen as a democratic, developing economy country. But when it comes to representing the rights of poorer nations or developing nations, especially vis-a-vis the developed world,
Hmm.
whether at the United Nations or elsewhere,
Yeah,
I mean, it's more like seen as foreign policy posturing rather than actually anything substantive or solid.
that's
So
true.
I think that is a difference which very strikingly can be cited as two. Therefore, I said that very difficult to compare
Hmm.
anything to choose as to be compared.
So we've talked a lot about the competition. Now I want to talk about, well, still competition, but in a different domain. So do you think like these both the countries were almost like major powers now? One is emerging, one is already one a major power. Can they cooperate in the climate domain, which is now known as climate diplomacy? Do you think because it's a natural cooperation space, the emission targets, UN's pressure, all of that, do you think that can evolve as a natural cooperation space, or do you think rivalry will also spill into that domain in climate?
Yeah, in climate, you see, there is a lot of intent, there's a lot of good intention for cooperation and collaboration.
Hmm,
But again, I mean, China is definitely far ahead. China has achieved in terms of green technology, in terms of green funding, etc., etc. I'll give you one example that in 2013-14, that means almost a little more than a decade ago,
yeah.
Beijing and New Delhi were declared as twin cities. So
Okay.
at that time, there was a lot of talk about what can be done, especially in New Delhi,
Hmm.
to take care of the pollution,
Yeah, the air quality index is
air
pretty low.
quality. And Beijing was also then at that time considered to be among the very poor cities in the world in terms of air pollution levels.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of talk about it, but nothing happened. And now, after 10 years, see, we are still where we were. And even today, I was reading in the newspapers in India, thanks to the late monsoon, until 10 days ago, the atmosphere and the air in Delhi was still called clean. But now, the AQI levels have reached very poor levels. And we're still where we were 10 years ago, or maybe worse. And look at Beijing. I mean, now you can see blue sky in Beijing all year round.
Yeah.
So, as I said, there's a lot of good intention, but
It's
I
not
mean,
much is happening on the ground.
yeah,
Tangible.
like they say that there is a lot of gap between the cup and the lip.
Yeah.
So,
So the next question brings US in the picture. So you know that it's writing on the wall that India is deepening, has been deepening its strategic ties with the US, investment ties with the US. Some part of it is political also in a way, and it has also managed its. India has also managed its rivalry with China, despite US's warnings and tariffs and all of that. How do you think, like, how sustainable is this dual approach of India managing ties with the US and China for long term? Do you think it's sustainable for the long term?
well, I think India will really have to work very, very hard to make it sustainable in the long term, because otherwise, what will happen is that India will have to, I mean, to be relevant and useful for both these two rivals, China on one hand and the US on the other hand. If India wants to be relevant to both of them and not necessarily relevant because of being against each other,
Mm.
then either India will have to really compromise on its foreign policy integrity, or what it is known for, like strategic autonomy.
Yeah,
And if it is not willing to compromise on that, then the question is, what will India offer to continue to be relevant for both these two rivals.
Yeah.
Because as things are becoming clearer now, that in fact, I'm still trying to understand. A very recent article in Nikkei Asia
Hmm.
says that the most relevant and scary issue today is not the confrontation between US and China.
Hmm.
It is actually the collision between US and China.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's a very interesting, stimulating issue also. What happens if, because you earlier mentioned about whether India and China, or India for that matter, will be willing to or is ready for complete decoupling with China.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have seen that America tried its best,
Yeah. It didn't happen.
or the West tried their best
Yeah.
to decouple, but
Yeah.
it did not succeed.
Yeah.
So if there is some kind of a understanding between China and the West, or China and the US, then what will India do?
Yeah, but what do you think that it will do? This is my next question to you now. If they both collide, what do you think? Whose side will India pick, or how will it maneuver this situation?
Well, India will definitely look for that side which brings in technology and investments into India. I
Mm.
think that's for one. Because right now, for example, there's very little FDI which is coming into India.
Yeah.
There's very little foreign technology which is coming to India.
Mm.
So, if that situation does not change immediately, or uh, a few years down the lane, I think then it's a big trouble for India.
But do you think if India does choose the US, because the companies that you've mentioned is satisfied by US, not China, because China does not really invest in India as such. India will also be losing a major economic and trading partner if choosing sides.
Well, I mean, if you notice, immediately after COVID and during the last 2020, 21, 22 year, during the COVID period, and to some extent from 22 to 23, there was a lot of talk about and a lot of editorials in the newspapers in India, in the West, in America, that India is going to be the next supply chain,
Yeah.
or India is going to be the next China.
Mm.
In the last more than 1.5 year, in particular, nobody is talking about this,
Mm.
right? Instead, what I see is even in China now, the Chinese have become perhaps more confident. The Chinese are now writing that the next China will be China. So I think that would be my answer.
Okay, so this brings us to the last question, and it is a very interesting one. I really put a lot of thought in, like presenting this question to you. That if President Xi and PM Modi meet tomorrow with no preconditions, which is impossible, but for the sake of this hypothetical situation, we'll assume with no preconditions, what's the one issue that you think will produce the biggest breakthrough? Would it be border disengagement, trade rebalancing, or any grand bargain on the South Asian influence?
Well, I mean, this is a very interesting question and very tricky one also. And maybe I think I see this as a teaser to me also, because
Okay.
it's very difficult to choose the three options you have given.
Hmm.
And but if I have to choose one,
Yeah.
I think I will go for the easiest option of the three, which is the breakthrough in the border disengagement.
Hmm.
Because both sides do not have to actually invest anything in arriving at this kind of an understanding.
Yeah.
Whereas the other two options of political influence in South Asia and what was the
Trade
third?
rebalancing. Trade
Yeah,
rebalancing.
yeah, trade rebalancing. they're really, really, I mean, they are the nitty-gritty of the relationship.
Yeah.
Whereas on the border disengagement, both the countries really do not have much at stake.
Hmm.
Of course,
Yeah,
it has
you're
not
right. Like the
happened.
pros and cons.
Yeah, I mean, it has not happened despite there's so many 23 or 24 rounds of negotiations at the military level and the foreign policy
Hmm.
diplomatic level since Galwan.
Yeah.
But I mean, both sides know that sooner or later it will not be sustainable to continue to have such a large deployment on the border. So it will have to come to some kind of an agreement to either reduce the deployment
Hmm.
or think of some other more positive and effective ways, which can be done. But I don't think,
Absolutely.
yeah, but I don't think South Asia political influence, for example, if you look at today, actually India does not have any effective diplomatic relations with any of the South Asian neighbors.
Hmm.
So why would China be interested in even, taking any initiative on South Asia,
That's true.
right?
That's indeed true. Yeah. So that brings me to the end of my questions. Do you have any ending concluding remarks on this talk and amazing discussion that we've had? Very insightful. I loved it.
Thank you. I think I loved your questions, very thoughtful questions
Thank you so
and
much.
very profound questions. And well, the only thing I would like to conclude by saying is that uh, it was late 1970s, when I started learning Chinese
Mhm.
and about China.
Okay.
And this question I'm asked by all my students and many other people in India almost every day.
Hmm.
That when I compare India-China relations in the late 70s, early 80s to now,
Hmm.
then what is my feeling and what is the future of this relationship?
Yes.
So my answer is that in the last or in the past 4 decades, that the relationship has actually gone from bad to worse.
Okay.
So if that is any indication, then I'm not so confident that we'll have a good prospect for future.
Hmm.
So I would wish very sincerely that either this leadership of Modi and Xi Jinping or the future leadership to really, really reverse this trend,
Hmm.
and perhaps, if not towards normalization of Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai of the 1950s, then at least take it back to late 70s and early 80s.
Yeah, like take it back to bad.
Yeah, the
From the verse.
future belongs to the past. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very thoughtful. Thank you so much. I loved our discussion today. I loved your answers to my profound questions. So thank you so much for answering them. I hope our audience has also learned a lot from your insightful analysis and opinions and the whole holistic picture that you've painted for us. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. And I really, really enjoyed all of your questions and talking to you.